Hey everyone, Caleb with Antique Book Collective, and today I'm answering a question that I'm sure you guys have had at some point if you are new, and I'm sure some of you guys have had it if you've been in business for a little while and still haven't gotten this beloved Top Rater Seller badge. And of course, as you guys probably put together, that is the answer of how do you get a top rated badge for eBay selling? Totally ruined that one, sorry, but it's actually pretty simple to get a top rated seller badge. In fact, there are quite a few people that have their little programs that guarantee, oh, you can have it in X many days. And at the end of the day, that guarantee can be taken with a pinch of salt sometimes because there is a time requirement to do with the whole top rated seller thing, but it is quite easy to be a top rated seller or at least an above average seller. And while I do not personally put a ton of stock behind being a top-rated seller, I do definitely say that see that there is a benefit. In fact, there's quite a few benefits, but there is, besides those benefits, there are some things beyond that people do definitely like. So there is a good reason to want to be a top-rated seller, besides just being like, I'm a top-rated seller on eBay. Besides that, though, there are other things. So with that said, though, the other things that you might want in addition to being a top-rated seller is good feedback on your items that you sell. Yes, you cannot be a top-rated seller if you have bad feedback, but at the end of the day, it's not just about having a few good feedbacks or enough good feedbacks. What you want is a good number of good feedbacks on your items. This does not have to do with being a top-rated seller per se. However, it is something that you normally see going together. So for me, I personally, when I was doing my business, I didn't pursue hardcore being a top-rated seller. I pursued getting all the good reviews I could. So I was throwing in extra things in with my items, extra related things. That's the thing right there, guys. So for me, selling books, so I'm just grabbing something right here. So let's say I sell a cookbook, I would throw in another cookbook, especially because cookbooks, you can buy them for 50 cents a piece or less. So for you, it's basically no added cost. You might add £1 on your shipping, and if you're paying for an extra £1 of shipping, it might be worth throwing in like 2 cookbooks or something like that. Or if you sell a cookbook for £2 and it's like £1 and like an ounce, it might be worth throwing in the extra cookbook to get it up to £2, and that way again you get the extra book to the person, and they get a really good taste in their mouth. They're like, ooh, yes, I love this person. I'm making sure to leave good feedback. And again, that's just because the number of good feedbacks that you get is important. Now, once you hit 65.5 billion good feedbacks, probably doesn't matter that much about getting a few extra ones, but if you guys are brand spanking new and you only have one or none, it definitely is worth getting good feedbacks. So for me, from my experience and what I've heard and seen elsewhere, people generally like to see around 24 or more positive feedbacks on a seller before they buy from them without really feeling a little sketched out. But of course, 100 is over 100 reviews is even better. Over 1,000 is better. Over 1,000,000 is better. So of course, that is something to definitely aim for. But if you guys are brand spanking new, just be sure to get those first 24 as soon as you can. Now, I know that sounds like that number is just pulled out of my butt. I promise it's not. That is based on numbers that I've actually seen. So for me, 24 was the number I saw for eBay, and for Amazon, I'm an author also. For Amazon, I saw that, yes, after you have this many reviews for your book, it's good, but once you hit over 16, it gets a little bit better, and once you get over 20, it's even better. Somehow it's not just a linear growth. Once it's 16, it's sort of exponential up to 20, and once you pass 20, it's even better. So there's definitely stuff that you guys need to keep in mind on how many reviews you need, and I'm sure there are quite a few other opinions on how many reviews you need for your eBay store. So for me, I found, once I got over 24, my sales did increase. Once I got over 50, they seemed to increase, but it was sort of linear. Once I got over 75, though, it seemed a little more exponential. So very well, it could have been exponential the whole time, and just because how that function works, it might not have seemed like much at the beginning. But now that I'm over 100, it's okay, happen pretty often. And the further and further I get, more and more I get, it's more and more sales coming in. It's okay, I can definitely deal with this. So again, reviews, good feedback is a very, very, very important thing. And from those good reviews, it definitely does help you guys get the top rated seller badge. Sorry. So with that said, though, guys, I'm not just sharing opinions on this one. I also want to share the actual facts. So with those facts said, with those opinions said, I want to get into the facts right now. So I'm just going to read off the eBay website just a few of the things that they say that you need to be qualified as a top-rated seller. So with that said, your account has to be over 90 days old. You have to have 100 or more transactions, and that has to total over $1,000 in sales, and that has to be over the last year and with U.S. buyers. I'm sure they have something different for like Australia or Canada or that sort of stuff, but for me, I live in the U.S., so I need to have 100 sales to U.S. buyers. So for me, guys, I sell antique books. Hitting $1,000, easy, stinking cheesy, because if you guys have been following my page for any amount of time, my average sales price used to be $70. So it's pretty easy to hit $1,000 when you're doing $70 per item. So excuse me. Got myself my calculator right here. So to hit $1,000 off of $70 per item, that's just 15 items. Now, currently, because the recession is coming in right now, I actually changed my business model. I pivoted into lower profit items, which would be cheaper items for people to buy, because cheaper items, for me, books, people do love buying those. Used books do so well during recession, so I pivoted into that to prepare for it, and because of that, I actually was able to get along fine. My profits are actually increasing as the market's declining, which I'm so happy about and so thankful for, but my collectible, my antique side of my business, its sales are down to probably about 10% of what they were just a year ago, 2 years ago. And the cheap books, those are totally making up for the loss in sales there. They're making up for the loss in profits. And again, I'm actually profiting more. But with that said, my average sales price has dropped from $70 to $35. So it's been cut in half. And while that sounds terrible, $35 profit per item is still pretty stinking good. And no, not every shipment I do is at that level, but it still is pretty stinking good. So with that said, $1,000 to hit that, if you have $35 per item like I currently have, that is 29 different sales that you have to hit the $1,000 threshold. But again, I have to remind you guys, you have to have 100 or more transactions besides that. It has to be 100 transactions and over $1,000. And over $1,000 in sales. Excuse me for the burp. Sorry, guys. With that said, though, on to the next little part. You have to have a defect rate that is under 0.5%. You have to have cases closed without seller resolution less than or equal to 0.3%, and 2 or few cases. And you have to have a late shipment rate of less than 3%, and your tracking has to be uploaded on 95% of your transactions to U.S. buyers. So with that said, back to the first things that I said, the 0.5% of defects and the 0.3% of cases closed without resolution. So those things, guys, honestly, that sort of feeds off of what I was saying earlier about you need a certain amount of good feedback. So if you guys can get that good feedback and you're pursuing that good feedback, odds are you're not going to have those defects. But of course, that's not guaranteed. There are jerks out there that are going to try to ruin your day. There are jerks out there who are going to buy a $1 million watch from you and then say it was just a rock when they got it and then send you back a rock and keep the $1 million watch. There are thieves out there. So personally, for me, when I started my business, I actually held on to the more collectible, valuable items until I had a certain amount of reviews, until I had my footing as an actual seller. I'm going to go over that in another video, but I waited for my high-end things until then, because people are, from my experience, from what I've heard, generally people are a little more apt to say you're a liar if you're a brand new seller as opposed to a more established seller. So that was just what I personally did. Not necessarily advice, that's just what I did because I like to play things safe. If you guys have been following my channel any amount of time, you guys know that I am a student of history and I try to play it safe as often as I can. I think twice, take one step, and then I don't have to take 2 steps back for every 1 step forward because I think twice and then I take my 1 step forward, because that is something that I have found does very well for me, and because I'm a student of history, it's something that I've seen works very well for people in general. So with that said, there's a lot of things that you guys can do to make sure that your defect rates are as low as possible. One of those things is to under-promise on items. So again, for me, I sell books. So for me, I'm going to grab the cookbook again. For me, this cookbook, I would say, potentially I could say it's in very good condition, but it does have some shelfware. It's got some parts about it, so I would drop it down to good, just be on the safe side. But if I really wanted to make sure that I did not get anyone complaining whatsoever, I might say that this book is acceptable condition. Honestly, guys, sometimes it's worth the under-promising on a book. And when you are listing it, for me, whenever I take these listings for these different books, I take quite a few photos and I list out all the defects or most of the defects, like the biggest things, and I tell the people, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Here's what's good about the books. And I make sure I say all these sorts of things so no one can be like, hey, this book, you said it had this and it's missing half the pages. And I'll be like, well, according to this photo, and this paragraph, it clearly says otherwise. So that way I can definitely point out these things. And in addition to that, when I get offers on books or someone asks about a book, I make sure that I say in the thing, if I feel like they didn't notice a certain issue with the book, I'm like, and please remember that there is a stain on the back cover, something along those lines. So the reason why I mention that is there are quite a few, it's actually annoying for me, guys, of people selling books and they only take a picture of the cover and then they don't tell you anything else about the book and they're like, book's in acceptable condition, buy it. And you're like, well, what's acceptable? Is it like acceptable because it's only a cover? Like only a front cover? Like, what do you mean acceptable? So for me, I make sure I tell everyone about the book as much as I can. And something else that's frustrating for me as a seller is, again, you guys know I sell antique books, collectible books. Some of these books, guys, are hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. And there are people that are literally only taking a picture of the title page or only the cover and nothing else. And they won't even tell you anything else. And it's just like, listen, pal. If I'm paying this much, I want to know about the book. I don't want to know that you ship FedEx, dropped off every Tuesday, no exceptions. That doesn't help me. So for me, I try to always share as much stuff as I can. Even on the lower end books that I've been selling now, I still make sure to take the time. And yes, it does slow me down this much, but I find that it's worth it because I have yet to get any negative feedback. I know I might be jinxing myself and there's going to be a troll out there who's going to hunt me down and leave me negative feedback. But again, that's why I make sure to leave the air gap between myself and on this channel and my eBay business. That's why I don't share that information, is because there are trolls out there that are like, oh, just you wait, you're gonna have a negative feedback. It's like, bro, get a life. But with that said though, guys, there's a lot of things that you can do to lessen your risk of getting negative feedback, but it is not necessarily guaranteed that you can completely avoid that. So if you ever do get negative feedback, just be sure to get as many positive feedbacks and as many sales with positive feedback as you can to counteract that, because at the end of the day, if you have a negative thing come up, you can't necessarily get rid of that. You can argue with eBay, be like, hey, this is actually not true, and they might take it down for you. Not guaranteed. However, with that said, I find eBay is a lot more understanding than Amazon is, and that is one of the reasons why I left Amazon just for eBay exclusively. It's treated me very well and my profits are insanely up, so I'm very pleased with that change, but that's not necessarily advice. That's not what I'd advise everyone to do. However, I love antique books, so the eBay thing, in addition to me liking the clientele and customer service more, I also just like the stuff that I sell with antique books a whole lot more than what I was doing with Amazon of selling, oh look, I have yet another copy of Hatchet, let's say. I'm just one of 75,000 other people selling this book. Wow. As opposed to me selling antique books, it's like, I'm the only person on the entirety of the internet. In fact, there are no records of this book anywhere else. And with that said, I actually want to show you guys something. This book right here, guys, I am actually so happy with this book. I think I promised to make a video about this book exclusively in the future, but this is called Die Graf Lenre, and it's a German book. And this German book, guys, it was made by a Lutheran pastor in the year 1751. And this book, guys, zero records of it anywhere on the internet. And by that, I literally mean that I was looking up every keyword I could come up with. I was using all the different keyword tricks and tools and all that sort of stuff to try to find this book. No record of it. The only thing that I could find that was sort of related to this was, of course, the author himself. Again, that's how I figured out he was a Lutheran pastor. It's how I figured out that he wrote all these other books. It's how I figured out it was the right year that he was alive for this book. And this was actually his first book as far as I'm able to tell, unless, of course, that there are other books of his that have been lost to history. But this book, guys, since there were no records, I actually was able to hop onto the Wikipedia page and be like, hey, So I see you guys have these 6 other books he wrote, but but you don't have this book. So I made sure to put in the entry for this book. So there's finally a record for this book on the internet. That is, if Wikipedia kept it. And of course, besides that, there's also the record now for this book for my eBay listing that I did for it. But besides that, this is the only book out there. And it sort of is a lot cooler to have the only book out there on the internet for that, as opposed to, as I said, Hatchet, you're one of quite a few other people. But if you're like me and you're selling these books, it's like, listen guys, I'm the only one with this book. And I know other people are selling some of these more common books from this author for $250, but you don't understand. This is the last one of these books as far as anyone knows. Ergo, this book is more valuable, so you can command a higher cost. So for me, back to this book really quick. This isn't what this whole video is about, but just because it sort of works. This book, again guys, I couldn't find any comps about this book because, again, there are no other mentions of this book, but other people were selling other books from this author, and they were selling for between $54 for really, really ratty ones that barely didn't exist anymore because they were just torn to shreds, and up to like around $200 for books that were the more common books by this author, ones that there are quite a few other listings for. Whereas this one, again guys, there's nothing else like this, so I decided to ask $450. Of course, I'm sure I'm going to end up selling it for less because I take like most of the offers that I get just because I like to see my revenue turning over, because guys, I pay $1 per book. So for me to sell a book for even like $200, that means I can buy 200 other books. And if I can buy 200 other books, that helps my business a whole lot more than getting potentially $100 more 7 years down the road. So that's the reason why I do that with my business. You guys, of course, can do it however you want, but that's for me a business decision that I've made. Sorry. So again, that's just that with that book. So with all that said, though, back onto the top rated seller stuff, what it takes. So I hope that we addressed all the stuff for defects with books. So with that said, onto the late shipment thing. So for me, for late shipments, to make sure that I don't have any issues with my late shipments, is I actually give myself a 3-day window. You can give yourself, I believe it's up to like a 30-day window to drop off a book or whatever else you're selling. However, I personally would not do that. The reason for that is because buyers, when they buy something, they don't want to wait 30 days plus however long shipping is. They want their purchases rather quickly. And for me, I ship USPS Media Mail, which I've been informed can take up to 21 days. Did not know that was necessarily a thing. I knew that it said it could take like between 3 and 14 days or something like that, but I guess they said, oh, it can take up to 21 or even more, and didn't know about that one until I actually had them lose a box, and I had a buyer reach out after a month and like, hey, so are the rest of my magazines or books or whatever else I shipped? Must have not been magazines because media mail, but they're like, is the rest of this coming? And I'm like, I didn't know it wasn't there yet. I am so sorry. And I reached out, tracked all these things down, and I eventually refunded them because I thought the Postal Service lost it. And then the day after I refunded them for it, the Postal Service ended up finding it and delivering it, and I was just like, wow, thanks. But again, as you guys know, with the profit margins I deal with in my business, I was definitely able to absorb that loss because, again, my profit margins, they allow me to do a whole lot of different things. So that's something that's definitely very nice. So with that said, I like to shoot for the 3-day window. The reason for that is sometimes you are not able to make a delivery on one day, and then you can drop it off the next day, and then sometimes things might not get scanned in right away. So I like to have that extra day just to make sure that nothing ever reflects badly on me. Now, of course, bad things could still happen, and it might take longer than 3 days, but at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can do. But for me, I've been in this business for several years, and in all those years, I have not had one late shipment thing, and that's, again, just because those 3 days works so stinking well for me. And for me, I also will be moving far away from the city in the near future, hopefully. And where I'm moving, there's still a post office pretty stinking close. I want to say just like 3.5 miles from where I hopefully will move, but it's definitely not bad because where I want to move, it's rural as everything. Like, you have the small town, and then it's miles, and by miles, I mean like 100 miles at least, to the nearest town. But if you want to go to the nearest city, oh boy, you are in for a whole day of driving. So that's what I'm personally looking towards doing. But even with that, you still have the post office, which means it still gets scanned in within 3 days, so it's pretty stinky easy. So for me, I live in the US, post offices are all over, which means that it's pretty easy to make sure that your stuff is always scanned in pretty quick. In addition to that, you can always put different packages into your mailbox, and the mailman or mailwoman will pick that baby up and take it in and scan it in and all that sort of stuff. That works as well. You can also schedule pickups. I believe it costs $25 if you have a I want to say prestige USPS service, but if you do something like a flat rate box, I believe those are the premium or prestige or whatever it is, ones that they will come and pick up for you. Basically depends on the different service that you use. Again, I do media mail, so for me, if I wanted to do that, I would have to pay the $25. So with that said, that addresses the shipment thing. So on to the next thing for tracking. Tracking, guys, this one comes with a big fat caveat, a big fat caveat. So I might point out that tracking uploaded is what it says, which means if you guys have been doing eBay for any amount of time, or if you've been thinking about it, I must say that it says tracking being uploaded means that if you do local pickup only, that's not an option for you. So from what I've gathered, you can't be a top-rated seller if you only do local pickup. I'm not guaranteeing that's a thing. In fact, I hope it's not, because that's actually a really big bummer if it is. But according to this, it definitely could be a thing. So you could still do local pickup here and there, but that just has to be under 5% of your sales, because you have to have, again, carrier validation for 95% of the transactions to U.S. buyers. So if you have a whole lot of local pickup for your business, that actually brings your numbers down, and that can hurt you, and that can take away your top seller badge. So that is something definitely keep in mind for your business, is local pickup can actually hurt you in the long run if you have too much of it, or if you only rely on that, because again, you have to have 95% or more of your things be shipped, and that's according to eBay's own rules. And then in addition to all that, local pickup, I personally have never been scammed on it, but I know of plenty of people that have had horror stories about being scammed on local pickup, and how they say they'll never do it again and all these things, because when you do local pickup, you don't actually get to scan anything currently. eBay was thinking about rolling that out not too long ago. I did a video on that, and now I've had several people be like, oh, that's not a thing anymore. I'm like, well, as I said in that video, I said it is a thing right now. I can't guarantee it's going to stay a thing, because eBay does always test things out. So hopefully they eventually bring back a way to scan in things for local pickup, because I personally think that that is a great business model. Local pickup, that is. I think it's a great business model, and it just seems like a travesty to have it so people that only do local pickup can't be a top-rated seller, or people that have lots and lots of local pickup can't be a top-rated seller. It just seems almost wrong, because there's nothing saying that these people that run those businesses are not good business people by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of them, but definitely can be better business people than a lot of us. So with that said though, guys, that's all it takes to be a top-rated seller according to eBay. Again, I have my own opinions. Besides that, I do find that reviews do a whole lot better for me. In fact, there was quite a while in my business that I was only an above average seller, because I was doing this on more of a hobbyist level, because as I've mentioned in other videos, I go between putting in a ton of time in this business and just a little bit of time, basically depending on how much money I want, how much time I have, that sort of stuff. It is something that, for me, I'm able to scale really easily. If I want to make a ton of money, I'll just put in a ton more time, get a ton more books, get a ton more sell-through. It's really easy for me to scale. However, for you guys, depending on your business, maybe it's a little bit harder to scale, but from what I've heard, people don't normally have that issue. Generally, it's a lot easier to scale stuff online than it might be in person, just from what I've heard. So again, that's more of an opinion than an actual fact, but it's a opinion backed up with facts that I've heard from other people, I guess. But with that said though, guys, there is a ton of stuff that you guys should do. If you guys want to learn all the ins and outs, just go onto the eBay page, ask all these questions, go on to Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever your preference is, ask these questions, be like, hey, how many reviews should I have for eBay? Hey, what does it take to be a top-rated seller? What does it take to be above average? What does it take for this, for this, for this? And as I mentioned earlier, guys, the customer support, the seller support people at eBay, they're some of the best people out there. And something that I personally enjoy is, like, whenever I call in with any issue or question, they're like, oh, hi. After, guys, customer support, so many companies that I work with, it's like waiting. Oh, there's Jesus, second coming. Oops, I can't answer the phone because it's so stinking long. But like eBay, guys, you call and, like, I've had it so quite a few times, it's like 1 minute and they're there, and it's just like, wow, I'm so used to being just completely neglected and mistreated by customer support. Meanwhile, eBay's like, hi, how are you today? Da, 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 da. We see you've been working with us for this much time. Thank you for your devotion, for your respect, for all these things. It's just like, I want to give you a hug and a box of Girl Scout cookies, because that is awesome. You guys are cool. Like, for me, I really enjoy the customer support people at eBay. I don't know for sure if they'll answer all your random different questions that you might have to start a business, but there is definitely a chance that they might. And if they don't answer those questions, they do answer quite a few other questions, and they help you on quite a few other things. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. So with that said, though, guys, if you guys do become a top-rated seller, there's nothing that you have to do on your own. Like, you don't have to say, oh, I accept this new badge. You'll automatically get that new badge, and it's really cool. You get a little email. Honestly, I think it'd be cool if they gave you a little box of streamers. You know, like for YouTube, they give you like the silver plaque when you hit 1 million subscribers or whatever it is. They should do that for eBay. They should be like, you're a top-rated seller. Here's a little button. You're cool now. You know, I feel like that'd be something that'd be cool. But with that said, that's just something I think would be neat. Maybe we should implement that as YouTubers. Be like, hey, I'm officially top-rated eBay seller YouTube channel. I'm cool now. I don't know. But that's just me playing around with you guys. But with that said, there's a lot of different stuff about how you should run your business if you really want to be successful, get good reviews, get a good amount of sales. So if you guys would like to learn more about eBay businesses, if you want to learn more about my specific eBay business, and I share literally everything about my business. I don't have a paywall where you have to pay to get a course. It's all right here. So if you guys want to learn more about that, subscribe just right over there and check out one of my other videos, please. And I'll see you guys in the next one.